Welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast, episode 200. And I want to ask you, are you worth remembering? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser, co-founder and CEO of Kale Houser Leadership. Thank you for joining me. For those of you that have been on this journey with me for the last several months, we are now on episode, holy smokes, 200. It is labeled 300 in our list, but this is episode 200. Wow. I guess that really kind of adds up real quickly when you're doing them 5 times a week, doesn't it? So I just wanted to say my sincerest gratitude and thank you for those of you that do listen, my mom included, of course, and my parents, and my amazing wife, and certainly some extended family. And for those of you out there in the business world that I have not had a chance to meet or interact with, I certainly hope you are finding this enjoyable and beneficial to not only your life, but to your business and how you manage your teams. So I was thinking a lot about this. It's kind of, it's a little bit momentous of an occasion, episode 200. It's certainly, something you don't think about in the beginning of I can't imagine making it that far. But as it was coming up and became evident that we were going to get to an episode 200, I was hoping to do something a little bit special with you, but I had a last minute change of plans and something fell through. So you get me instead. Hey, congratulations. That's what you're here for anyway, right? Thank you for that ego stroke. But I got to thinking, well, what do I want to talk about for episode 200, to make it a little bit special? And this kind of ties in a lot of things that I've already talked about in the previous 199 episodes. And one of them being remembered and getting known in your marketplace. And I had a couple incidents recently that kind of brought this to my attention, and they're good reminders, not only for me, but also something to pass on to you as a reminder to you. And hopefully it finds you well in this phase of life, that whatever you may be in, and is a good encouragement for you to kind of keep going and keep pushing. And that is one is publishing. Right. People tend to get upset. They're like, oh, I'm not getting any traction. People don't know who I am. And all these kind of self-pity type of items that have to do with, not necessarily their popularity, but just how well they're known in their industry or their marketplace. And the question I always have to ask is, well, what are you doing to get known? Because everyone needs to do something to get known, right? Politicians go on the campaign trail to start spreading their message and spreading their face and their name across their demographics of their constituents, right? This happens. Products that launch by major companies, they do campaigns to make that product known and the benefits and how much we need it as the public, right? This happens all across history, and it's happened since the advent of basically capitalism, of trying to sell things en masse. And if that is you, if you are running a business and you're trying to sell things, whether it be to the entire nation, the entire world, or just your community, maybe you're a local service of some sort, what are you doing to get known, to make people aware of you, to even know that they need your product or service, let alone to pick yours amongst the competition? And I found this interesting because, a couple interactions and conversations that I've had is people get kind of upset. They're like, oh, nobody knows me, all this kind of stuff. And, or even people don't even remember my name. Like, I introduce myself and, 3 minutes later, they're like, what was your name again? And I kind of have to chuckle at that a little bit, because it's, well, what are you doing to be worthy of being remembered? In today's day and age, the advent of social media and technology, our brains, boom, boom, boom. There are a million inputs hitting our synapses every couple seconds. And what are you doing to rise above that, to even be known? Maybe you're at a networking event and there's 50 other business professionals there. Why would, as you're shaking hands and introducing yourself or doing your little elevator pitch for what you do, what your business and service is, what makes you different or special that, though, even half of that audience will remember you? Remember your name, remember what you do, remember that you were even there when they leave the venue in an hour. What are you doing that's different, right? We kind of make fun of or look down upon these guys that are kind of these big showmen. Obviously P.T. Barnum was kind of the epitome of big showmanship. He put on outrageous claims. He did things to become known and attract customers. And certainly that, there's a little bit of showmanship and gamemanship in that, but to a degree, that kind of has to be you. What is your, not necessarily what is your shtick, right? What is it, do you come in always wearing a top hat or something like that? But what is it that makes you recognizable to people? I've got a good friend, actually is a former commander of mine, and he mentions like, I always wear red shoes. He does it because red is the color of remember everyone deployed, and that's kind of his thing. And people now know him as the guy, no matter what he's wearing, especially if he's at like a networking or a conference type of an event. He's the guy that wears red shoes. And that's his thing, and that's what he's now become known for. Obviously, this took time, and he built this over time. But that's his thing. And people now remember him and remember, the company that he works for now and what he stands for and the agenda that he goes after and the people he tries to help. And it has become part of his identity. Well, what is that for you? And I'm not saying you need to go out and, wear clown shoes or any other kind of random thing. It certainly needs to be applicable and appropriate to connect the dots. You don't want to be like, oh, that's the guy that always wears, a sweatband, like he's out jogging at business meetings, right? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. But it could easily be, that's the guy that's always, wears the same polo with his company logo on it. Brandon Dawson's a perfect example of this, who's the CEO of Cardone Ventures, partners with Grant Cardone. 100%, that is pretty much in a professional setting. All you will see him in is his black polo shirt with, Cardone Ventures, 10X, and Cardone Capital, and the other Cardone brands on it. Certainly Cardone Ventures. And he's admitted that, and he's talked about that. He's like, yeah, this is my life. This is my company. Why would I not be promoting it? But that has become part of his identity. He always wears this black polo. And I think even outside of that, you will find him usually in black because it kind of is in keeping with his identity and his motif and what he becomes known for and is easily recognizable and identifiable in his world, in his market. Does that make sense? So I would highly encourage you, if you have something like that, maybe it is a company polo, maybe it is a company hat, and if that's appropriate for you, do something that you become memorable for. Do something that you become recognizable for. You know what I mean? If you're a small business and you're in, maybe the home service industry, what makes your vehicle driving down the street recognizable to your community and going, oh yeah, that's the windows guy. That's the carpet cleaning guy. Like, yeah, you got to call him, or when it comes time to clean carpets because family's coming over for the holidays, you go, oh, I know who I need to talk to. Boom. That business, because they're recognizable and they formed this identity and they're memorable. Maybe not by name, maybe you're not going to remember the name of your carpet cleaning business owner, unless maybe that's the name of their business. But you understand, like that identity of the business itself becomes memorable. And then I want to additionally, tie this into people's names. I've talked about this before. It is so important and so fundamental. If you are in any capacity, the type of person that is in charge of other people in some sort of leadership capacity, you must, non-negotiable, remember people's names. Absolutely, on your team. And it may be several layers deep on your team. If you've got a bigger organization, you need to make this a priority. Figure out a way based on what you know about yourself, strengths and weaknesses, to remember people's names. If that means when you meet somebody, you literally have to pull out a little notebook and go ... John, ... Sally, ... Sandra. Say, oh yeah, it works in the accounting department. New hire from Toledo, right? You make these little notes to now they become memorable in your brain and it sticks. And next time you run into Sandra, you go, oh Sandra, And I had an example of this recently, which is a great reminder for me because you get going and you expect these things to be just normal behavior because you've made it part of your behavior. I strive very hard to remember people's names. I am not perfect at it. I have failures where I've met people, maybe a week previous, and obviously the week goes on and I see them again next week and I'm like, oh, I remember that person. I remember that lady that I met last week. Wow, and I'm trying to rack my brain to remember it. And sometimes I just don't because I was not purposeful to go, oh, this is Brenda. Brenda, and you make some association, right, to try to remember that name. But I was recently, actually this past week, at my wife's networking group's holiday party, which was really cool. It was actually my first chance to interact with them, because this is a group that my wife belongs to on her own. And it was really neat. They just had an evening kind of appetizer, hors d'oeuvre, cocktail little hour party at one of our local restaurants. And it was at first chance. And of course, it's all business professionals, whether it be realtors or lawyers or, mortgage brokers, all kinds of different local professionals. And then they had, your plus one or plus two, and most of them were spouses or significant others. And I had the opportunity to meet not only these other professionals that my wife interacts with weekly in her networking group, but also their plus ones. And like I said, usually it was a spouse of some sort. And I made it a purpose going into it to try to ensure that I remembered people's names. I was intentional about it. It is something I normally do, but it was kind of when you're going into a situation like that where there are going to be, potentially 30 or 40 people, and you're going to be introduced to a lot of them because Liz is introducing me as her husband. It was a reminder to myself of, oh, okay, Kale, you need to be intentional about remembering these people's names as the, conversation goes on and you meet these people. And I just thought it was so fascinating because, I had met several couples and husband and wives and different people throughout. And, hey, I'm Kale, I'm, so-and-so. And I took that second to be like, oh, da-da-da, this reminds me of this, and this is their name, and boom, boom, boom. And I kept it like that. And as the evening wore on, conversations flowed in and out, and you reconnected with different people as the evening goes on. And I go, oh, and I said their name again. And it had been, maybe 30, 45 minutes later. And they're like, holy smoke, like it was a shock to them that I remembered their name after meeting them once, in this large group setting. And it just kind of struck me as interesting that is not the norm. That is not the norm, or I would dare say the expectation that people remember each other's names. And I think that's such an interesting kind of observation of our society in general, that we don't necessarily expect people to remember our names. We're so used to just blending in and becoming part of just the larger group or blob in general, that there's no expectation of somebody else to remember my name. And I go, man, why would you not want me to remember your name? Especially in a networking group, right? That should be kind of your whole purpose, is that, oh, this is the realtor, I remember her name. And anytime I now run into somebody that's looking for the services of realtor, I go, oh, you need to go talk to so-and-so. But I would highly, 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 highly encourage you to make that your expectation, not only for you as you interact with other people, but for you, like as in interact with other people, to remember their names, right, on that side of the coin, but on the other side of the coin, to do the things to help become memorable to them, help you and your name, your company, your services become memorable to them, beyond just the immediate of that conversation that's happening right in front of you, but as they go about their lives. Maybe it's a day later, an hour later, or a week later. And they go, oh yes, I remember talking to you. You did this and this and this, because you related something and you were memorable to them. And watch how your sphere of influence grows, because people want to be part of that. People are naturally attracted to attractive characters. And that's what you're doing. You're setting yourself up as an attractive character to them by being memorable. So be worthy of being remembered. Do the things to be remembered. Become worth remembering. And that's my number one advice to you in business. Be worth being remembered. That may be in your business, that may be in your community, in your church, wherever that may be. And it doesn't have to be outlandish, right? Try not to be worth being remembered because you are under constant litigation or constant lawsuits, certainly. But be worth being remembered of how you service your clientele. Be worth being remembered of how you treat your employees, of the type of culture that you've built in your company. Be worth being remembered because of the extra mile that you go to ensure a positive experience for people around you. Be worth being remembered because it's not all about you. Be worth being remembered because you've shown interest, genuine interest in other people and their successes. And then that will be a life ultimately worth living and worth being remembered, if that makes sense. So I hope you find that useful. I hope you find that encouraging to you. If you're not doing that already, take those little steps. You're going to have setbacks. I've had setbacks. It happens. No big deal. Continue. Be worth being remembered. All right. Episode 200. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't, hey, go back and binge the previous 199. It'll be worth your time, certainly. You can put it on as you sleep, and then it'll just osmosis straight into your brain, and you'll wake up just incredible and ready to go, right? That's how that works, I think. It's science. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I can't wait to see what happens on the rest of this journey as I try to carve out my little niche in the business world and personal development world to try to help people just like you become amazing. So thank you for joining me. If there's anything I can do for you, please reach out. Shoot me a DM. Reach out on email, kale@kalehouserleadership.com, or any other way of whatever platform you're listening or watching on this, and I will be happy to talk to you no matter where you're at in the world. Have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.